This week on Motor Week, Ken Gibson has the first exclusive drive of the Seat Formula. Richard Hammond gets to grips with the Volkswagen Bora. And Ian Royle puts another Seat through its paces, the Seat Toledo.
I hated chemistry lessons at school. There were far too many complicated formulas. The car industry, actually, to get success is a bit like chemistry, passing it at school. You need to have the right formula. And this incredible machine is Seat's magic formula for the future. This car has the absolute minimum in here. It's just the way you expect a sports car to be, a true sports car. It's raw, there's bare metal. It gives you the instant feeling that you're about to enjoy a riot of driving, and it doesn't disappoint. In front of us, main dials, we've simply got a rev counter with a digital speedometer either side, like two little eyes around a nose. You've got the fuel gauge, temperature gauge, and that is basically all you need for information. This is where all the flashy bit goes. We've got a 6-speed sequential sports box, just like the British Touring Championship. You've also got the added thing, if you don't want to go down there, Tiptronic little paddles for going up and down, tucked in behind the back of the steering wheel. So you've got instant access, you never leave the wheel. Look down the bottom and it's almost like your very first Meccano set. You know, there's like little legs everywhere, little frame bits down the bottom. It's wonderfully simplistic. The formula looks, feels, and is all about real fun. It's about having an absolute hoot. I have to admit, I felt a bit of an imposter when I got in here, because apparently this is the ultimate new fashion statement for trendies. And I thought, as I am just slightly the other side of 40, maybe was I too old for this? But what the bloody hell? You don't have to be any age to enjoy yourself, and every minute I spend in this wonderful machine, I think I'm getting younger. And you know something? I actually feel as if I'm about to just do one of those marvelously nutty things, like I want to swivel my cap round and say, let's move! The Formula's powered by a 2-litre mid-engine, but it's no ordinary 2-litre. It's a turbo based on Seat's World Rally 2-litre unit. In straight figures, it produces 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds and a top speed in excess of 140. One of the reasons for its turn of pace is the fact that it's got an aluminium body, which makes it amazingly slimline. Although it's currently only a show concept car, albeit a very expensive one, it cost over £1 million to make. There is no doubt that Seat are considering seriously whether or not to put the car into production. My advice to them would be, do it. It's one of the freshest designs I've seen for years, and it's an undoubted winner. Alfa Romeo have succeeded for so long because they've always managed to come up with highly individualistic sports cars. Cars that had the big D factor, D for desirability. Well, the Seat Formula is to me the first concrete evidence that Seat have got all the right credentials to seriously take on Alfa Romeo as the Spanish equivalent. This car should make Alfa Romeo and any other car manufacturer take Seat very, very seriously indeed.
When car bosses tell their designers to put the boot in, their hearts must fall, because what that usually means is take a perfectly complete and proportioned hatchback and stick a boot on the back of it. I'm thinking of the likes of Vauxhall's appalling Belmont, the equally terrible Nova with a boot, and VW's sins as well with the Jetta and the Derby. Which is why it's hardly surprising that VW have tried so hard to persuade us that this, their new Bora, is a standalone car in its own right and not simply a booted version of a Golf. And I'd say that's probably fair comment. There's no doubt that this line at the back couldn't be achieved by tacking a boot onto a hatch. It has meant a redesign, and overall it's a pleasing and well-proportioned car. There is something a little bit odd down here at the front though. It does look rather as though someone has gone like this with a Golf. In some countries, the saloon is seen as a rather prestigious alternative to an otherwise pretty pedestrian hatchback. That's in some countries, but not in this one. In this country, in fact, the only time we see as a saloon is vaguely desirable is when it comes from a manufacturer who builds them only as a saloon and not as a hatch. In other words, the likes of Mercedes, BMW, Jaguar, Bentley. That means prestigious manufacturers only. So this comes at a critical time for VW, when as a group they're striving to establish the VW badge as the prestige volume manufacturer mark. So what we have here is a rather staid and pedestrian booted version of a hatch, which is for people who don't mind sacrificing all the driving enjoyment for a car that offers a little more space for the golf clubs. No. Because having a boot is about more than just a big lump of metal stuck on the back of the car and somewhere to put your golf clubs. In fact, the boot itself has a big role to play in the stiffness of the whole structure of the car. Because all of this stuff around here means for a more stiff car. In fact, it's more stiff than the equivalent hatch, which means this car is less likely to twist under load when you're driving it hard. So in fact, the saloon is the better sporting drive than the hatch. And as we've spoken so much about the boot on this thing, and it is a saloon, we better have a quick look, and I can tell you, it's enormous. I mean, really big. This has the V5, it's a 150 brake horsepower engine and a stonker. Most of that power is actually available in the mid-range, which makes it a very different experience to, say, a more high-revving, typical 16-valve 4-pot engine. It's actually enormous amounts of mid-range and torque, and I suspect it's been deliberately tuned to achieve that, which is a far more usable sort of power. Driving position is excellent. It's absolutely beautifully built in here. Build quality really is impeccable inside and out. In this cabin, you really could be in a prestige car. The steering is excellent, direct, perhaps a little more feel would be useful. The gearbox, no complaints at all. For me, the gear change is ideal. It's slick, but positive, and a bit notchy towards the end, but you know you've got it in gear, which is comforting to know. The chassis, predictably, is excellent. You can certainly see its pedigree. Start to push it through a sequence of bends at any kind of speed, and it grips beautifully. In this instance, we have rather large 17-inch wheels and big tyres to keep plenty of grip there, but I'm sure they all share the same excellent basic chassis dynamics. The ride is excellent as well, even on these big 17-inch rims with the low-profile tyres when you'd expect it to be a bit jarring and a bit jolty. It soaks up bumps with no problem. As a pretty long-legged tourer, I think it could be a really capable machine. Above all, though, the impression that you're left with is one of build quality and substance. It feels like it's hewn from one solid lump of material. The plastics used are great. The leather in these Recaros is beautiful, if a rather expensive option, I suspect. Plenty of people in the know will tell you that despite its rather boxy and boring looks, the old VW Vento, if it had the lusty V6 engine, was actually a faster proposition than the equivalent VR6 Golf, and that's because of that extra torsional stiffness through the structure of the car, and the fact that the weight of the boot adds up to a 50-50 weight distribution, or near enough, which is really the perfect goal. That's what you want to go for. And another reason to put the boot in, if you needed any more encouragement, is that if you're buying second hand, you might like to know that you can get the equivalent of an £8 or so sporty hot hatch Golf in a Vento for about £4 or £5, which is a sizable saving and a lot of performance for not much money. At a shade under £20,000 for this car, it might sound like quite a lot for a VW, but don't forget it does have pretty much the build quality of a BMW or an Audi, and whereas with either of those manufacturers, for this money you'll get a basic entry level with nothing beyond the horn and indicators as standard, in this instance you've got a beautiful interior, luxuries like satellite navigation and CD remote control, air conditioning is automatic, and don't forget that beautiful lusty V5 engine. We do so love to give our cars labels, and the good news for Volkswagen is that this is probably not going to be known as the VW Golf with a boot. The bad news is that it probably is going to be known as the poor man's BMW.
The quest continues to change SEAT into a serious car manufacturer. Indeed, they now hold the title of Europe's fastest growing car maker, and it's probably not too far from the truth. Following Volkswagen's buyout of SEAT a few years ago, they've worked hard and continue to reinvent themselves, especially with their products and that all-important factor, image. And in the shape of the new Toledo, the image seems to be working, but with a hefty price tag. £260 million worth of development has gone into this car alone, but it shows compared to SEATs of the past, which hardly set the world on fire. These broad front lights which integrate into the grille, and that all-new SEAT badge you'll see on SEAT cars of the future. And the exterior of the Toledo seems to bulge in just about all the right places, ensuring it has a very sporty appeal. And side-on looks remarkably like the new BMW 3 Series. Surely it's not been designed with that in mind, but it has been designed to give you lots and lots of space, particularly if you wanted it as a family car with an enormous boot. But the family sector is not what SEAT are aiming after with this car. Technically, it's the size of, say, an Astra or a Focus, but size-wise it goes up against the Ford Mondeo and the Renault Laguna in the business sector. Whether that's a wise policy, though, remains to be seen. Within that sector, SEAT are battling it out with their competitors over safety, claiming unrivaled standards on the Toledo. These include 7 onboard safety systems, which basically assist you with braking and keep you pointing in the right direction. You also have 4 airbags and 3 3-point seatbelts in the back of the car. Out on the road, the Toledo is actually quite a fun car to drive, ensuring it adheres to the manufacturer's philosophy of enjoy yourself. It shares the same platform as the Audi TT and the Volkswagen Golf. It's all part of VW's philosophy of brands sharing the same platform, but it does seem to work, so you can't quibble with that. The suspension is perhaps a little too hard for my liking, and a lot of road noise comes into the cabin. And if you're travelling at reasonable speeds over, say, rough grounds, the bumps and the creaks do come into the cabin a bit too much. Maybe the suspension just needs to lighten up a bit more, but apart from that, it's really a good drive. Performance is good from this 1.8 litre engine, 0 to 60 time of around 10 seconds and a top speed of 120 miles an hour. But the Toledo to really go for would be that new V5 with its 2.3 litre engine. It's a first for SEAT, having an engine over 2 litres and having more than 4 cylinders. And it's a really cracking unit. Now, this new Toledo was developed over the twisting mountain roads in the Catalan region, and that's why you get such a good ride with taut and sharp handling, a lovely smooth crisp gear change and a very smooth clutch too. It's an all-round excellent package. Now, one of the best things about the new Toledo is the amount of room inside for the passengers, both in the rear and here in the front. Lots of space, comfortable seats, and also lots of headroom too, thanks to that high roof line. And inside you can see the similarities with its bigger brothers, both the Audi A3 and the Golf. Of course, this car shares the same platform as those two from the VW stable. You get the same sort of quality, the same switchgear and controls too. Rather smart cup holders, a quality stereo system, air conditioning, electric windows all round, and these rather smart chrome door handles, which just round it off. Overall, you'd be foolish to think that the Toledo doesn't have a fighting chance with the opposition, and part of this is to do with its competitive pricing. The 1.6 standard model starts at around £14,200. For this 1.8 20-valve version, priced at around £16,795 on the road. You really don't have to splash out too much more money for the top-of-the-range Toledo either. The V5 2.3 litre is priced at £17,595. And for a change, those extra little luxuries, including climate control and leather seats, come at a reasonable price. So overall, we reckon the Toledo is a relatively good car. You get the benefits of German design engineering, quality components from VW and Audi, plus an excellent size of car for this particular class. It also has a very high specification and styling that means it looks better than the likes of the Mondeo and the Laguna. Seat are a manufacturer that are going places. Beware, they mean business.
In the words of that well-known song, girls just want to have fun. And what better way to bring a smile to a girl's face than a cold, crisp winter's day, a cluster of hot hatches and some fantastic roads. So what's in the pack? Well, no hot hatch test would be complete without the original.
In the late 70s, VW squeezed a tuned 1.6 engine with fuel injection into their sensible family favourite, the Golf.
It won the heart of everybody who drove it because it provided driving thrills without the financial spills. So is the Golf GTI still the hottest of the hatches? The first impressions are that the Golf has certainly grown up. It's traded in its trainers for a pair of hush puppies. The handling feels smooth and sophisticated, as does the ride. It really doesn't have that in-your-face feeling that it used to do back in the 70s. Over the years, the steering too has evolved. It really no longer feels as tight and responsive as it used to do.
Under the bonnet of this £18,000 GTI is a 1.8 turbo engine producing 150 brake horsepower, a top speed of 135 miles per hour, and it'll get you from 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. It does need the turbo. The 125 brake horsepower GTI would struggle to pull the skin off a rice pudding.
So the Golf GTI has grown up and it's become a high-class car. But let's not forget that Volkswagen also owns Seat. And Seat make the car that is the undisputed king of the rallies. The car on which they've based this, the Cupra Sport. Very nice. And what about Peugeot, the company that gave us the 205 GTI, the only hot hatch to have had in the 80s? Well, they now give us the 306 Rally. It's lightweight, it's stripped out, it's just perfect for having fun in. The only problem with these two contenders is deciding which one to drive first.
Let's start with the Cupra Sport. This scorcher has a 2-litre 16-valve engine with very similar performance to the Golf. A top speed of 134 miles per hour, 150 bhp, 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. Its performance may be similar to the Golf, but the price tag is quite a bit lower, coming in at £15,500.
This car is boy racing at its very best. You get a good hard ride, fast, accurate steering, superb handling, and just enough understeer to put a smile on your face. Now, the only thing that lets this bundle of fun down for me is the gear change. It's a little bit too long and lethargic for a car like this. And I'm going to have to be a total girl here, I'm afraid. The dashboard on the front, which is straight out of the Polo, is a bit too dark and dreary. It could be a little bit more stylish.
And last, but definitely not least, the 306 Rally. Now, this little pocket rocket has absolutely blistering performance. 167 brake horsepower, a top speed of 137 miles per hour, 0 to 60 in 7.3 seconds. Yes, please.
Driving this car is an absolute blast. It really urges you to push it further and further, and yes, it puts a real smile on your face. This is the kind of car that makes you choose the longest route possible for your journey, just so you can spend the maximum amount of time in it. Unfortunately, it's also the kind of car that puts you in danger of losing your driving licence through speeding. What Peugeot have done to make something this much fun is taken the 306 GTI 6 and stripped it right down. There's no electrics package, no air conditioning, no fancy door trims. What it all does is save an awful lot of weight. You get no frills, but you get plenty of thrills.
The engine feels amazing. It pulls well up to 4,500 revs, but then it explodes up to 7,000 in a frantic scramble for the horizon. This is a car with no toys, but you don't need them, because this car is the toy.
So is the Golf still the leader of the pack? Well, it's still in very good shape, although it's gone a little bit flabby around the middle. It's still an excellent car, but it's not quite as rock and roll as the other two. Having said that, though, I've got to point out that it's by far the most reliable and the best quality vehicle here. So what of the Cupra Sport? Well, girls do just want to have fun, and what better than this neat little package to have fun in? The only thing that lets the Cupra down is the gear change. So, the king is dead. Long live the king. I hereby crown the 306 as the car most likely to satisfy a girl's needs. With a car like this in your life, who needs a man?
British motorists driving abroad this summer could face being ripped off by car accessory stores even before they leave our shores. Investigators for a major car magazine found a huge variation in prices for items required by law for foreign travel. The two versions of the Audi TT Roadster Quattro bound for Britain will have a competitive price and an extensive equipment list. Equipped with the 180 bhp version of the turbocharged 1.8-litre four-cylinder engine, the new Audi TT Roadster Quattro will cost £29,150. This will rise to £32,150 for the larger 225 bhp version. In this 225 guise, the Audi TT Roadster gains larger 17-inch six-spoke alloy wheels with low-profile tyres. Nissan is announcing prices for the generously equipped new Primera range, which goes on sale on September the 1st. Prices range from £14,000 for the entry-level 1.6e to £21,000 for the top-of-the-range 2-litre SE+, an average increase of just 1% over the outgoing Primera. The Ford Focus continues to be Britain's best-selling car in the buoyant July market. The Focus, European Car of the Year 1999, has sold 7,919 units. July was the fourth month in succession and fourth month this year that the Focus has been the country's #1 in the new car sales chart. Total sales of the Focus in Britain since its first launch date in 1998 now exceeds 71,635. Next week on Motor Week, Richard Hammond pits the Range Rover Discovery against the Audi estate, and I'll be going topless at the official launch of the brand new Audi TT Roadster.